What you're going to see in this video is how to properly use the Ninja blenders that we have in our student kitchens. So this is the base of the Ninja blender. This is the pitcher, and we're going to take a closer look at that in a minute. This is the lid. And this is the blade, which they call a stacked blade assembly, and students will never handle this. I will explain that in a little bit. So I'm going to slide this aside for a moment and show you this pitcher, because the lid just doesn't snap on any old way. There's a specific way for safety reasons. If you look at the top of the handle, there's an arrow. There's also an arrow on the lid. You're supposed to line those two up. Otherwise, the blender won't work. So when you line those two up and you snap it down, you notice there's this handle. The blender also won't work until this handle is snapped down into place. There's a specific way it goes on the base, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But when it's time to take the lid off, you have to press this release button. You see that handle pops up. There's your pour spout. And then you can lift the whole thing off. Just like there is an arrow here to line up, because it needs to go on a specific way, the pitcher needs to go on the base a specific way, but there's not arrows to line it up. So you take the handle and you put it, line up the handle so it lines up where it says Ninja. If you try and put it on any other way, it won't fit. But it slides down nicely, and then you're going to turn it one turn to the right and you'll hear it lock. Or one turn to the left, rather. You'll hear it lock. And there's actually on here, it has an arrow with a lock. So you're going to turn it this way. So your pour spout's going to end up being on this side. Okay? Now, when you guys are blending, let me take this off. I'm going to slide this over again. The very first thing that is going to go into this pitcher before you put any of your ingredients in is the blade. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this in before you start blending. And when you're finished blending, before you take anything apart, I'm going to come take this blade out. These blades are so sharp, I just don't want you guys to cut your fingers at all. So I'll come pop the blade in. You can put the lid on while it's off. That way you'll be able to see the arrows. You'll add your ingredients. Snap it down. I'll move this back into view. There's suction cups, so when it's blending, it's not going to slide all over the countertop. Now remember, we're putting the handle of the pitcher, we're lining up the handle with the word Ninja, and then we're sliding it to the left, and you'll hear it lock. Now we're making smoothies. I'm going to move this closer to the camera. Move the camera closer. You'll see this is the on-off button, the one that's red. There is a smoothie button, but we're not going to use that. If you look the next button over, it says Ice Crush. We're going to use the Ice Crush button because we're using frozen fruit. If we were using fresh fruit, we would use the smoothie button. So you're going to use that Ice Crush button. And I'm actually going to make a batch so we can see how that works. So I have my ingredients measured, and I'm going to add them. My blade is in there. I'm going to add them to the pitcher in the order that they appear on the recipe. So the first is half a cup of orange juice. I'm going to pour that right in. And then 2 cups of the frozen fruit. Just kind of pour around that blade. I'm using frozen mango and pineapple. You can use any frozen fruit you want. I wanted to stay away from mango and pineapple in our classes because I have some students with allergies with those fruits. So that's why we're using mixed berry. Your half of a banana goes next. You can break that in half again if you want. And then last, your 2 tablespoons of sugar. So I'm going to put the lid on. Remember, we're lining up the arrows and snapping that down. Let me bring the base over into view. The handle goes in front of the word ninja, and I spin it to the left until I hear it lock. Now I'm going to hit the ice crush button. Turn it on. They light up. And it stops automatically. And it'll keep going a little bit. I still see some frozen fruit in there. So just let it go until it stops. So I'm going to turn that off because I want to see, it looks pretty good to me, but I'm going to turn it this way to take it off the base. I'm going to press that release button I showed you earlier on the top so I can take the lid off. And I'm going to put a spoon down inside. Never stick your hand in there, just to see the thickness of it. Now that looks like a pretty good thickness for a smoothie. But if your kitchen, if you want it a little more liquidy, you're going to add water 1 tablespoon at a time to thin out that mixture a little bit. So this is the point where I want you to stop and call me over. Let me slide this out of the way so that I can remove that blade for you. Okay, I do not want you guys touching this blade assembly at all.